Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Industrial Real Estate Show. I'm very pleased to be joined by Rick Walker. We're going to talk about a lot of things because he's got a background as growing a company to 400 people. He was in charge of a nonprofit that had a lot of people and a lot of good work that they did. He still is a podcaster. He ran for politics. He had a one-on-one meeting with a president. He's writing a book that's coming out very soon. When this is published, it might actually already be out. So lots to talk about. He also has a real estate portfolio that he oversees. So I'm very excited for this one. First, Rick, thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Hey, Chad, thanks for having me. I've been looking for this for a long, long time. I've got one of my two favorite books right here with me. This is, I've got the tabs and ready to roll. I'm interested in talking a little bit about business and real estate and life, whatever else you got for me, Chad. So really looking forward to today.
Yes, thank you for your support on that as well. And I've had the chance to read your book, and I am so enthusiastically recommending it. I wasn't able to get the hard cover of it in time, but I did have the PDF that I was able to go through. The cover alone is incredible. And after we're done this, I'm going to put up a cover of the book, and we're going to get to that as well. But could you just actually give me a little bit of background on your business experience and including your exposure to commercial real estate? I think that'd be a really helpful place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up down in Corpus Christi. I live in Houston now, so sort of still southeast Texas, but I grew up in Corpus Christi, which is fairly close to the Mexican border. Grew up sort of in the poverty of a two-bedroom home. My dad was out of work a good deal of our childhood, and so we were going out on the weekends just trying to earn money, painting flagpoles, and we got into the work of arbitraging watches from novices into in professional realms. And so we made a little bit of money doing that, but he was out of work for a good deal. And so what I realized was that I knew that I didn't want to struggle with money as I went into college and beyond, but I never had a positive vision for what I wanted to do. But in that flight sort of out of that difficult upbringing, earning money anyway, we realized that we could make some money in the real estate space. And so when I was a sophomore, junior in college, I was in Oklahoma City going to school, and then I went home from college to Corpus Christi. So this is 9 hours drive. And so over that summer, I started a business, and basically I would give flat fee, like firm fixed flat fee bids to schools and churches and office buildings to handle all of their maintenance and management. So I give them one monthly price. I'm taking care of like the light bulbs that go out, the air filters, the HVAC repairs, toilet repairs, cleaning, anything that needs to be done is sort of an all-you-can-eat type of flat fee service. And so that took off. I was able to hire my first 4 staff that first summer. And over time, I was able to go back to college that next semester. And every Thursday after classes, I would drive the 9 hours back to Corpus Christi. I'd see clients on Fridays. I would train staff on Saturdays, and I'd drive back on Sundays to Oklahoma City. So this is 18 hours round trip every week. And I did that for 18 months. And so over time, I got into, larger facilities. The LEED building started to explode, a lot of new construction in that space as well. And by the time I was 26, I had over 400 W-2 employees, and we were rocking and rolling. Around the same time, I started another business in the federal space. We scaled that into 6 states. And then I consequently started a private equity real estate business with a number of family offices and institutional investors. And so we own and operate our own commercial real estate assets right now through both syndications and fund strategies. Along the way, I've done some nonprofit work as well. One of them, I took a nonprofit and scaled it into 50 countries with about 2,300 team members operating that. And I've also done a lot of work with other nonprofits, whether it be charitable foundations or even seminaries in the Middle East. So yeah, so I've done a few things, and so happy to go any direction you want to go. But yeah, I'm a real estate guy at heart.
Yeah, well, I definitely do want to talk about the real estate, but even curious on other things. You also ran for Congress at one point. So you've, and I read in your book that you're not as political as you were at the time. What was the experience like running for politics in the midst of being as busy as you were with everything else on your plate?
Yeah. So It was an interesting experience because I jumped into this race after our home flooded after Hurricane Harvey. And so our little pocket of our community, which is sort of a, maybe 10 or 15% of the whole congressional district, they were really hurting. Over 10,000 homes flooded, ours included. And then our congressman announced he was going to retire. So I decided to jump in the race. Little did I know that would become, at that time, I think either the or one of the top two or three most expensive congressional races in U.S. history. And so we had 9 candidates there, just a complete and utter bloodbath over about maybe a 4-month period. And the person that ended up winning was Congressman Dan Crenshaw. If you ever see him, he's got the eye patch, and he just had a lot of success, a lot of the energy coming out of the gate on that. Former Navy SEAL, just a really energetic, charismatic political figure. And so he ended up taking it and going to Congress, and so that was a great experience for me. It was hard to see, hard to get the texts from people that are in other parts of the states when they show your picture on NBC National News that you got just annihilated, and so that builds some resiliency. And yeah, but I'm a professional at failing. I say that life is nothing but a string of failures with occasional moment of perfection. And so I'm really, really good at failing. That's really all I have to offer is just some blood and sweat.
You mentioned it was a YouTube video that you had done about how much you were spending on advertising. Are you comfortable saying that again on how much you were spending?
Yeah. So the day before the day of the election, I think just on one social network, we dropped 80,000 in one day on one social network. We were also doing some crazy things like with billboards. When I began to realize what sort of congressional race this was, and it was going to be sort of, maybe the most expensive in history, and it's only be during 4 months, right? A lot of congressional races last, 9 months or even a year. I started looking at the concentration of that capital and the availability of advertising spots. And so I went around immediately and started buying up billboards. This is in Houston, like towards downtown Houston. And so I don't know. I can't remember. This has been 8 years, but I think at one point I was spending between $25,000 and $40,000 a month on billboards.
Wow.
On top of that, and so you were spending some money, but then the political class, they want you to go raise capital. Go get funders, contributors. But the problem is in a congressional race, you can only raise, at least back then, you can only raise 2,200 a shot. Well, if you're like me and you're a 4-month race, you really can't raise very much money. And so in the end, I ended up putting, I think I put around $500,000 of my own money into the race and only raised about 100,000. And I had to give away a lot more than that back to the donors who overfunded the campaign when it was all said and done. But yeah, it was a great experience. And I think going through a book launch as you're doing right now as well, Chad, I think that's a like kind type of experience where you're ramping up for kind of a drop date and you have a little bit of a trail off there. Very, very similar type of effect, trying to get volunteers together. I think we had around 250 volunteers that would go block walk for us and stuff like that. And so you're using all these different skill sets that you learn in the business world in this political endeavor. And if you're an entrepreneur like we are, you're always thinking that these consultants, they don't have a clue what they're doing. And so you always kind of step in when things aren't going your way and you sort of overrule them. And I think that's probably one of the things that led to my ultimate demise.
Well, good for you for taking the shot at it, because most people, A, wouldn't be in a position where they could spend that much money, and then B, not even want to take on that challenge. So kudos to you for trying. I like you said, if we're all just a series of failures with one moment of perfection, then that all counts. So even though it was a failure, what I found interesting on your book, Dan Crenshaw actually wrote a review for you. So one of your political opponents actually still endorsed your book, which I found a testament to how you must have ran that race. Only one last political question, just because I think it's interesting before we get to the business. What was your one-on-one meeting with the U.S. president?
Okay, so that was a private meeting. So there were 9 people in the room. So we weren't, there were other people in the room as well. And you go along, you can find some pictures of this. So it was about an hour together, and he wanted to talk about everything. He wanted to talk to all 9 of us in the room. My wife was with me. I brought one of our business partners with us. and just had a great time. We ended up spending about 9 hours that day with other people in the Trump family that were also there with us the entire time. But President Trump had some weather delays trying to get in, and so but that was just amazing. And I can I'll show the viewers kind of the rest of this room here. But I've had podcast events here and fundraisers here with Secret Service here, and that's part of the kind of the special thing about being the president of the president is you've got special Secret Service detail here. And if you kind of look, I guess it's up here. This is where they mount the sharpshooters when they were here. They've been here five times, and you notice like these windows over here. Those windows are all covered up when they come. It's just sort of a fiasco here, but yeah, that's just sort of the uniqueness of the experience of meeting the president and spending some time together. So his family's been very kind to me, and I have nothing bad to say about him. I think he did us all a favor with the Opportunity Zone program with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in his first term, and so looking forward to see what happens in the second term.
Yeah, it certainly won't be dull. I think that's one thing we've learned so far into the second term is that there's never a dull day. There's always going to be something interesting. So it's safe to say that you had built your business early in your career, and then the success of your business helped you fund the real estate investing. Is that fair to say, or were there other steps in there?
Yeah. So this is one I guess shortcut would be, and I'm assuming there's going to be a disproportionate number of sort of brokers and agents that watch the podcast. Is I realized very, very, very early on that if I could convert my fees into equity, that would be a fast track. It would be fast track to pain in the immediate term, but also wealth in the long term. And so I began to do that. I began to turn down fees and ask them to let me roll it into equity. And so if you think about this is really smart. So let's say you're taking 3% on a transaction, or I'm using 3% because it's easy. And these investors that you're representing, family offices or private investors, they've got to come up with 30% down on a retail assets, for instance. And so if you can roll your 3% into that's 10% of the equity that they don't have to raise. And you make your life a whole lot easier, make their life a whole lot easier as well. And then you also are able to have a little bit more skin in the game. So they know that you're not just trying to sell them on a bad asset. They know that you're entirely rolled in with them. And I did very well using that mechanism. And then over time, as you're able to just establish your competency, your deal making expertise, I found anyway, that you can begin to GP your own deals, syndications, then funds thereafter. But yeah, I think rolling the fees is probably a number one recommendation for a lot of brokers. I know a lot of us are struggling to kind of pay the bills already, but that is really a great move. It was a great move for me anyway. But yeah, I did start investing in my own earned capital very early on. But then when I realized I could roll fees, things just got a whole lot easier.
Yeah, there's a Robert Thornburg who used to be the president CEO of SAOR. He always used to say brokers die broke. And I think that is a very true thing when a lot of brokers probably aren't thinking about saving for the future. They just hope that the money keeps coming in. But if they don't have a retirement plan, then it becomes catastrophic the older you get. Whereas if you take that mentality of investing in yourself and delaying the gratification, but in buying property, and remember that brokers die broke, if you can start either rolling in fees or just investing as an LP or however you need to do it, I think it is imperative that brokers are finding a way to invest back into it. So did you start more as just a limited partner? Is that how the structure was when you were rolling your fees back in?
Yeah. So I started making offers as a limited partner just to sort of roll into it. And just like from day one, the offer to roll into as a limited partner became something where they said, well, Rick, why don't you just run the deal? Why don't you just run the deal? And so that happened very, very quickly. Of course, I had a team. I may have had 50 to 70 third-party advisors on staff, and I didn't personally do any third-party advisory. So these were sort of like the one-offs that would come to me, and I would try to kind of pawn them off on another broker, another agent in the company. And they're like, well, no, Rick, why don't you do that? Well, I don't represent clients. And that was part of the bargaining. Okay, so look, Rick, if you'll handle this one personally, then and you're gonna put 3% in, then you just run the thing. Just run the thing. And the great thing about running the deal is that you can still get the fees on the backside, right? You can get leasing commissions if you want, but if you can get the exit fees, you're probably going to make your money back plus all the upside. So it's essentially a risk-free bet over the whole period, as long as you get your exit fees on the backside. And like we're actually selling an asset today that we're going to get the exit fees on. We got the insurance fees on, and we got the leasing fees and the management fees on for many years, plus the upside. And so it was sort of a low, no risk type of thing. But yeah, I found, Chad, that if you can make someone a lot of money, and we made these people a lot of money beforehand. I think there was probably an 18-month period where we made this primary family office about $15 million in commercial real estate, either through leasing up their existing buildings, repositioning them, or finding off-market deals for them to acquire, and then refinance very quickly, take all their cash out and move on. And so we made them a lot of money right off the bat. So we had proven our competency. They had known people that were in my network to be high integrity individual, and always your competency plus your integrity becomes your identity. And so we had those sort of two secret sauce elements there. And that sort of gave me an avenue to go out and try some different things.
Is that the moment of perfection in the midst of a string of failures?
Well, if it's one of those things where you have a good idea, right? You have a good idea and it actually works. Now, I don't know how it's all going to work out in the end, right? We haven't sold everything out yet. This may be catastrophic in nature, but it looks promising. It looks promising. But yeah. So it's one of those things where you actually have a good idea and something works. And there's things you could do better, right? So like I personally guaranteed about $15 million in debt with that first set of investors, and they assume that they had some control over me because I had that personal guarantee. Like they made some assumptions that when there's cash calls and they didn't want to meet the cash calls, that I would just come up out of pocket. And I did that for the first 2.5 years. And I started to look back and I'm like $775,000 of the hole from these cash calls that these guys didn't come out with, that these on properties these guys own the majority LP stake in. I'm like, this doesn't make a sense. And I'm on the hook for $15 million in personal guarantees. This isn't a good place to be. But you learn, right? You structure the deals better later on, like that exit fee. Like I didn't think about doing the exit fee, the guaranteed exit fee on the first deal. It just takes some iterations.
Can you talk a little bit more about the exit fees?
Yeah. So very, very, very straightforward. Your typical 3% or whatever your traditional buyer rep fee is going into the deal, and you're going to roll that 3% into the transaction, right? So you're not taking any cash out as the broker on the transaction. Then at the exit, you're gonna do the seller rep. So you're gonna be the listing broker, as they call it in many parts of the world, the listing broker. So you're gonna take, we do a 3% on that. Like, hey, we already control the deal. We're gonna get another 3% on that, and that 3% goes in at, it comes out at closing, I guess. So that comes out before all the repayment of investments, that sort of thing. So it's just your traditional operating costs. And there's some other fees along the way for general partnering a transaction. I like to just do a typical 1% management fee, 1% on assets, not on the full capital stack. So you're buying a $10 million building, you put 30% in, 70% debt. You're only getting fees on the $3 million that you put in. So it's about $30,000 a year fee on that. And then I like to do also leasing fees. I want to be able to control that in house, and then also the property management fees and accounting fees. As well, just traditional fees. I found that I can sometimes get 8 or 9% of gross revenues as management and engineering fees plus reimbursement. So that's a great thing to do, to be able to take 8% or 9% even sometimes. But I think the average is about 7.7% sometimes, based off the asset type. And so you can get a significant portion of the gross revenues off that transaction. And then whenever you go put it back out to market, you can offset that, or you can use those as add backs in. So assuming that the future buyer would not have to pay those fees. And then performance fees. These are in a variety of flavors. The most traditional, in our part of the world anyway, on these traditional, just buy and hold assets or buy and approve assets, are 80-20 split. So the LP
Hmm.
investors get like over 80%, over 8% hurdle is typically what it is. So the investors get 100% of the first 8%, and everything over 8% IRR. The 80% goes to the LP investors, and 20% is retained by the general partner on it, which I assume is probably fairly typical for
Yeah,
other parts of the world.
yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the exit that's a great way of structuring it as well. So you're, as an LP, if you're rolling in your fee at the beginning, you're making your normal distribution on that, but then you also have the upside of the fees down the way, and then you also have the fee on the exit. So I think that's a great way of doing it. What what asset classes have you traditionally looked at or been interested in?
So we're in office retail, and we've got this first industrial development that we have underway right now. And just a quick note about those performance fees. I found that for development, for instance, it seems that people are using multiple tiered hurdles, so multiple hurdles on that. So they generally end about a 60-40 split. So once you get it over maybe 15% or even 18% IRR on some projects, 40% of the split goes to the GP, and only 60% is retained by the LP, just because of the nature of the difficulty of the project. It's sort of an FYI there. But yeah, retail's doing really well right now. I'm hoping that we can get into some industrial before things slow down. I have some urban industrial close to downtown Houston that's on a very, very valuable land. So like the Dirt, for instance, where it is, if people are familiar with Houston, it's sort of near the intersection of Washington Avenue, which is sort of Foodie Row there, and Shepherd. The Dirt there's probably $150 to $180 a square foot right now.
Wow.
And so to try to get an industrial asset to perform with that sort of dirt, on that sort of dirt, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a very difficult lease job, but also a very difficult capitalization job.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the industrial development that you're looking to do?
Yeah. So I have 9 acres, and I have another 4 acres that are next to it. Right now, we're still in the early stages. We're still trying to work on our curb cuts, our median cuts, those sorts of things, and also our detention plan with civil on it. It was proposed to be 196,000 square feet originally. County came back and said, no, we need some more retention. Trying to make the retention work. And so I think right now it's going to be somewhere around closer to 175,000 square feet. We're looking at it's a 360 depth, 360 foot depth for the project. I think we've got it's set up. It looks like it's a cross stock because it's actually a perfect square. It's one of those weird things where you actually have a perfectly square piece of land. So it's a square, so you're able to have 4 different sort of retail type frontages, entrances. And so depending on how you demise the interior of it, you can either have, one cross dock and maybe 2 front loads, or you can have, you can have a retail frontage with a couple of rear loads in the back, or you can have one large tenant there. But it reduced our construction costs by like $6 a square foot by not having 2 separate buildings, by making it all one large contiguous space there. And so there are a lot of benefits there to the yield. And obviously, also when we can reduce our construction costs, we can also reduce our lease rates and become a little more competitive there.
Is that in Houston?
That is in Houston, yeah. That's
So
in Houston proper.
what's Houston's market like right now?
So full disclosure, so I still don't do any third party advisory. I don't really follow a lot of the numbers right now, but I could just say sort of from a feel, there's incredibly strong demand for tenants in the 30 to 50,000 square foot space right now. This is what I'm hearing from our third party advisory team. And especially in cold storage and things like they have 503B pharmacies here in the US. So these are sort of industrial grade compounding pharmacies for like testosterone, applications and for other sorts of clinics. And so as these clinics are funded by private equity, they're able to scale out and have 20, 30, 50 locations. They're taking all their compounding pharmacy work in-house and able to deliver directly to the homes or directly to the clinics. And that seems to be where a lot of the market is right now. And so you're looking at power demand. You and I had some conversations a few weeks ago about power demand. And then you're also looking at proximity to logistics corridors for delivery. The benefit to that is whenever you get into compounding pharmacy, it's sort of a manufacturing type of usage. You have smaller vehicles entering the premises, and so you have delivery vans going out instead of semis only coming in and out. It's a little bit more effective from an ingress egress perspective.
Yeah, well said. What's the goal? Are you looking to continue doing more developments? Do you look to buy more assets that are already existing? What's your long-term outlook for investing?
Yeah, so this is the first of about a $500 million fund. So we think that the leverage on the debt, the leverage on the equity, so the debt side of things are going to get a little bit more attractive over the next 2 years. And so we think the $500 million capital will be able to leverage to be about 1.25 to 1.5 billion in assets over the next 5 years. And so we've got this, call it 170,000 square feet. We have 2 more properties we're trying to get permitted this year as well, those will each be somewhere around between 170 and 270,000 square feet. And then we have other markets that we're looking at right now, San Antonio and the Dallas market as well, which would be sort of 2026, 2027 projects. But our only holdback is finding viable locations that we can get good access. Again, these median cuts and the power, those are sort of the 2 main restrictions right now that we're coming across. The delays. The construction is very, very favorable right now. Just the way that the workload is. There's some overbuilding in certain parts of Texas over the last 2 or 3 years, but you're still looking at an effective vacancy rate of somewhere around 4 to 6%, depending on what part of whether you're talking about suburban or urban context there. And so it's still a fairly attractive place to be in, but with construction rates low, we think debt's coming down. We think the leverage capacity is going to be expanding. We think that we'll be able to see some significant growth in the year with 3 either under construction and 3 permitted, and have 6 to 8 by the end of next year.
Yeah, placing $1 billion is a challenge. People think that it's easy to do that, but you need to make sure that you're making prudent investing decisions and not just going out and buying the first thing that you see and going on it. You still have to be very diligent with it. And like you said, power's a big requirement right now. What are you looking at when you're looking at a site right now then? Are there base standards that you need for the amount of amps and voltage that are coming into the property, or how are you making that determination?
I'm kind of dumb on power. I think, when that property that you and I were talking about a few weeks ago, where they came in and said we get 5,000 amps there, and I was told that was good. I thought, well, it must be good. Then I had no concept about what that meant. But yeah, we're looking for heavier power because I think that's going to be one of the constraints over the next decade or so. Obviously, in Texas, we have our own sort of guarded power system here. We're not really tapped into the rest of the country, the rest of the world when it comes to power consumption, and so we have to be very, very prudent with that. Some like for instance, I'm underwriting a larger project in San Antonio right now. The civil just came back today. He met with the energy provider, which is CPS out there, and they're like, we got to have full construction drawings before we even tell you what the power availability is going to be to that site. And so this is a situation where we actually have to lock down the land, pay to get, at least get some modicum of permitting underway before they even tell us about the power availability. And so you have all of a sudden, what could potentially be a 3 to 6 month contract period needs to be maybe an 18-month contract period because you have all these unknowns of the power. And then you have to deal with, again, curb cuts, median cuts in addition to that. And so it's just a challenge. But those are the main things I think is just the physical access and the power access. There's water is a little bit of a concern as well, but not that major of a concern where we are.
So definitely looking for land in those markets that you mentioned, good good quality developable land. Are you looking to buy any existing stabilized assets, or is it focus on development?
Development right now. I think we have a carve out for some acquisition opportunities in the fund documents, but I don't see. I think there would need to be some significant structural changes to the market to allow for that. Being this close to Mexico, and you look at Mexico's comparative advantages over Chinese for manufacturing, for logistics, and for even tech related types of products. You look at their rates and also their capacity, the education of their labor pool is so vastly superior to China. And with the tariff wars that have been happening over the last 2 or 3 months by the current administration, we're big believers that onshoring will be, if not a 2-year, but probably even a 15-year move. And the sort of the southern central areas of Texas will be a big beneficiary of that.
Yeah, this is a topic that I looked into a few years ago as well, was when Canadian Pacific merged with Kansas City Southern, and they formed a single rail line now that goes from Mexico all the way up to Canada. And I believe that there's a main terminal in Corpus Christi, your hometown. And that was a market that I think could have a lot of potential as well, because if I'm not mistaken, there's a deep water port in Corpus Christi as well. So not only is there a single a rail line, which has never occurred in North America before, connecting those three countries. I look at that line, like I can't remember, what did they call that? Just CPKCS now, or CPK, whatever that merger name is. That line, I would be so bullish on any intermodal yard or terminal space on that line, because I completely agree with you. I think there's more opportunity in Mexico to have things made there cheaply, and without having it go across tidewater, without having to go through ports. It can just go straight on the rail line and get to the heart of North America super quickly. Have you looked at Corpus Christi? Is that a spot that you've looked to invest in?
Yeah, yeah. My wife has some land north of Corpus Christi, actually, with rail access to that. I think it's probably the same rail line. So to get between Corpus Christi and San Antonio, which is about 100 miles north of Corpus Christi, so 100 miles north of the port, I think that the fees on that, when we last a few years ago, were like $2,500 per rail car to be able to utilize that route. There's a longer, more circuitous route that goes around that. That's a lot less expensive, but in order to go through that land, it's there. But I think she's got around 10,000 acres, something like that there.
Wow.
And so it's there. I don't know, I don't know if we're 10 years or we're 30 years away from being able to utilize that, but we've got water there. We've got windmills on there. We'll be able to use that hopefully, at some point before I die. But yeah, it's a great place to be. The idea, Corpus Christi's ports, by the way, are getting deeper. I think there's another dredging program underway. You also have the heavy work that's going across the bay from there in Ingleside, where you've got, I think they have a $2 billion Chinese steel plant that is underway there right now. But people should not neglect the fact that if you look at shipping lanes, to go from, I think it was the eastern coast of China, or maybe like the Beijing area, to ship something to the United States. If you ship to Los Angeles versus shipping around to Houston, so this is through the Panama Canal to Houston, it's 80 miles longer to go to Los Angeles than it is to go to Houston. And so Houston's actually a shorter route than the West Coast, and the West Coast, which traditionally hates business, they're really hurting themselves. I mean, including the actions that you see on the news today with the riots. They're hurting themselves with that. They're already playing it with a disadvantaged hand. And so I think you see a lot of energy, a lot of momentum going through this southern region, this maybe 200-mile stretch of coast, because between Corpus and Houston, you also have the Port of Victoria there. And of course, once you're in the Gulf, you can always go over to Miami. You can go to the other major docks around there as well. And so it's a very lucrative place to be, just from a cost standpoint, right? You get some cost compression there, get some efficiencies there. That's where margins get expanded, and that's what begins to incentivize people to relocate to that area.
Yeah, there's no market I'm more bullish on than Texas right now. For all the reasons that you mentioned. It's just there's population growth, there's just the activity towards the Sun Belt. You've got the trade synergy with Mexico there. For all the reasons that you could be bullish on a region, Texas is why I'm so keen on it as well. So I love the strategy on that. Or on the flip side, though, is there anything concerning to you? Is there any proverbial tailwinds, the cliche headwinds or tailwinds or side winds or whatever winds we want to call it? Is there anything that concerns you about investing right now?
Yeah, so I think politics drives everything, right? It drives your property taxes in a lot of parts of the country, through your school systems. People don't live somewhere; your school systems begin to decline. How you manage the roads, how you manage the other infrastructure, the economic development of the area. It's all political in nature. And I think for Texas, since the growth has been so extreme over the last 10 years, and it looks like it's maybe even accelerating, and a lot of people that are coming from places that are more decline, mainly from places like California, even some people from New York and other parts, Oregon, where they're traditionally less business friendly, and they have certain ideals about how life should be. Them bringing those ideals here, the things that made their own states failures, wanting to come here and see the same sorts of activities performed here, that probably is the biggest risk. And so having the politics shift over the next 20 years is probably the if not the main, but maybe even the only risk that I see in the market going ahead for Texas, and even for the whole Sun Belt area of the U.S. I think I'm very bullish on Florida. I'm very bullish on Oklahoma. Very bullish on Tennessee. Those are all great places to be, just because of the vehicular access there, and also the demographic favorabilities.
Yeah, great point on that. David just had a question. They just opened the new taller bridge and dredged deeper channel in Corpus Christi. They've got some big growth plans for that port. Yeah, I completely agree. Corpus is a market that I've looked at as well. Funny on the political side, I just came across a property the other day talking about property taxes. So 2019. I looked at the property the first time and didn't do anything with it then. Property taxes, it's a property on some iOS, so call it 8,000 feet on 5 or 6 acres. Property taxes in 2019 were $45,000 a year. This year's property taxes, 6 years later, $87,000. So in the course of 6 years, property taxes almost doubled, and nothing changed on the property. There wasn't any, literally nothing changed on it, and property taxes almost doubled in 6 years. And I think that this could pose to be a massive problem across the North America, in all markets where city leaders are just not being held accountable for these egregious increases in tax, and it's just not sustainable. At what point, if it keeps on that trend, and in another 6 years they double again, now you're at $180,000 in property taxes. At some point, property taxes are going to exceed the net rent, which is crazy. Do you see that as a challenge where you're looking?
Yeah, and that's why you want to play in your local school board elections. Like if you're living, like, for instance, I have one of my 3 kids. She attends a private school, and I still play in the local school board elections because of this sort of thing. They play these games, the property taxes. Say, oh, it's been fixed at 3%, or we load it from 3% to 2.5%. Look how good we are. Yeah, but your county appraisal districts, and the counties do the appraisals in most of the U.S., I believe. The county appraisal districts then ramp up the valuations that are attached to that. And so it's you never see a decline, you only see an increase. And so you have these protest firms. I don't know if you guys have it up in Canada, but they have these protest firms where they're going to come in here and they're going to get like 40% of whatever they save you, or 20% of whatever they save you every year. But you have to keep using them every single year, because pardon the phrase, they dick around with your property taxes every year. It's either the percentage, or it's the valuation, or there's some sort of like cap that gets moved around there. There's generally 2 or 3 different things that they can do that. But then the people that do these valuation, I guess rebuttals or protests is what they call them. They then run for office. They then run for office at the state level and all the other levels. And they'll, like one company might have 3 or 4 or 5 of these people in different positions in government. And these are all part-time positions in government. And so they can come in and they can make it as challenging as possible to understand the law. And they're just looking for wild fluctuations in these property taxes because that's how they benefit. That's how they benefit. And so these are the guys that are cutting the rates from 3% to 2.9 to 2.8. They go back and they campaign on that, but then they personally profit on the appraisals increasing so wildly at the county level. And it's just a racket the way that it works. And so I think playing politically, I think probably some of the best things we can do as people that earn our income from commercial real estate is becoming active politically, just writing checks. If you can write checks, you can get in some rooms, you can have some frank conversations with people. If you're not writing checks, they don't want to hear from you.
That's the reality of the world, as we all think that they're democratically elected officials. But you're right, money talks. And if you don't have the money to spend, they're not going to listen to you. So that's a very good point. Anyone that's tuned in, if you have questions for Rick, please feel free to ask that in the chat, because you could tell that Rick's got a very diverse background in business, politics, and commercial real estate. So any questions you have, please put that into the chat. But I do want to shift over to your book because, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I am a big fan of you, and I'm a big fan of the book. And I want to tee off a topic here for you because I found this chapter 1. I found this fascinating. Not many books are going to start off this way. Choose one worthy enemy. Can you go into that a bit? Choose one worthy enemy. What book starts off that way?
So the idea that we all know what we want out of life is a false premise. We were all told in business school and learning leadership that we have to set a vision, we have to set a goal, we have to set an objective, what we want to accomplish. We build up the tactics, we build the strategies around that to move forward towards that. That's been the classical argument. That's what I've used forever. That's just been what we were told. But the problem is there's so many men that are between 25 and 45. And Dr. John Vervaeke, who's a fellow Canadian, he's at the University of Toronto there. He believes that there's a meaning crisis underway among these men that are sort of 25 to 45. They maybe go a little younger, maybe go a little bit older, but these are men that don't have an issue. They don't have a vision of what's possible with their lives. They've never been in a relationship with another man that can teach them and mentor them and let them shadow them and to see what could be possible, how a man should act, how a man should father, those sorts of things. And so I began working about 2.5 years ago on this idea of like, what would I do if I was in that situation? Like how do you get out of that situation? Because all the academics, all the theoreticians, all the professors are telling you to like get a vision of what you want and go after it. That's what all the motivational speakers are telling us to do. And I'm thinking, well, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way. Like if you don't have a vision of what you want to do, what is that way? And so I began to think about like who are we as men? And the corpus of all the religions and even a lot of the philosophies say that we're made in the image of God, that we have a sort of a divine ethos about us, whether you're, Jew or Christian or whatever you are. Most people would agree that you have something sort of special about you. And so I've been thinking about that. Well, like what is the role? Like how do I build some certainty around this, and where do I connect that to these guys? And so I started thinking about light. And so the purpose of light is always to invade the darkness. And the purpose of the good is always to invade the evil. And if we're made in the image of a good God, or at least a good divine cosmos, however you want to put it, there should be some sort of drive within us that wants to cause us to attack the evil, just as the light is purposed to attack the darkness, that the purpose is inbuilt and is indwelt. And so what I encourage men to do is, if you don't have a vision of what you want to happen, find something that breaks your heart. It may be the sex trafficking site that doesn't respect children. It may be the human trafficking that's happening all around you. It may be that fentanyl that's in your kid's school system. It may be that alcohol that your mother-in-law and your dad, they can't control. Like there's some manifestation of evil that you see with your own eyes or you hear about with your own ears on a very regular basis. And if you let it, it'll break your heart. And if you can let something break your heart that's truly evil in nature, you can somehow cobble together the competency, the skills, the integrity, and even cobble together a team to go and attack that. And if you can attack that, that's the first step, because it gives you one move. If you could form one move, you have a reason to develop your competency. You can develop your competency, you can take a move into the forward position and attack that manifest evil. You then can begin to get a vision, a glimpse of what's possible for your own life. Then you can pivot to talk about the vision. But some of us, many of us, I believe it takes a worthy enemy to get us to make that first move toward the directionality of our future.
Very well said. Could you give some more examples on enemies? You gave a few. Could be someone with a drinking problem. It could be websites that you fundamentally disagree with. Any other ones that you've come across that are common?
Oh yeah. So I think inefficiency in business is a very, very common one. Like look at the widespread waste of labor and attention and computers and the lack of productivity in some of these automation softwares. You have it's all around us in the business setting. It's also around us in this idea where we all want to accrue greater knowledge, but we never want to do anything with it. We never want to take any risk with that. And so I think there's a lot of people who could probably help a lot of men sort of shift out of that comfort zone to be able to press forward into something new. And I think a lot of us, like for those of us that are leaders in different areas of business, a lot of that comes to play where we're looking at individuals in our organizations and our teams that they don't have the momentum, they don't have the drive to do that. We may be profiting off of them, but for us to encourage them to stay in that position would be a complete disregard for their imago, their presence, the worth of their life. And you can't do that to someone. You can't let someone stay in a position that they're clearly not built to be in. You have to free them from that. And you have to help them move on over time. So there are those sorts of things that come to mind. A lot of those things have a clear, definite ending. Like when you win, when you turn that person loose to be able to work, or you work with them on transition plan to find something that's better for them and their family. And some things are just going to take a lifetime to battle. And so those are the sorts of things that I think of. I think our proclivity is to think more near term. We think about the proximity of things around us, and the more we can expand our scope to the people around us that are, generally children or widows who have a disproportionate amount of pain in their lives. These are the most vulnerable in society, if you will. If we can concentrate on the most vulnerable in society rather than just the people that are nearest to us, we begin to sort of pick up a little bit of the divine help with, cobbling together the resources, the competency. There seems to be like some additional benefit. I don't know what it is specifically that comes to our aid that helps us whenever we help the least fortunate in society.
Yeah, good point. I've been reading a lot on World War II history lately, and one of the things that strikes me is the greatest generation was tough. It wasn't just tough men, it was tough women. You think of Rosie the Riveter, Yes We Can, the iconic poster, that women that were working in factories building airplanes, phenomenal. They're toughest people. There's a reason why they're the greatest generation. What shifted over, I guess that's 80 years now, to there's tough people out there for sure, but on a whole, I would say as a society, we are much softer than, like significantly softer than what the greatest generation was doing. What caused that shift, do you think?
It's the confrontation with evil. We like to hide the fact that there's evil that's evident all around us. We like to ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, because if we admit that it exists, it calls for something into us that we're commanded. No matter who we are, no matter what your spirituality is, we're commanded to go confront that evil. And those men that step foot off the shore in enormity, like we just celebrate the anniversary last week, those are men that had a forward momentum, were willing to risk their life for something that was higher and better than they were individually. And it was Chesterton that talked about that like, why was a man do that? And most people stand back and say, well, it looks like those men are going into war against that enemy because this is an enemy that they hate. They hate him. They want to defeat him. Like, why can't we live in peace? But the problem with that, as Chesterton says, is you're leaving out the more important part. And the more important part is it's not, they went into war not because they hated the people in front of them, but because they love the people behind them. It's love that causes you to push forward and attack that enemy. And as we ignore the enemies in our society, we then become the type of men that don't have chest, as Lewis would say, that the men that really can't love in the fullest dimensionality of it. We become weak lovers the more we ignore the evil that confronts us all around us. And the more we ignore that, the more comfortable we become. And my mission, Chad, is I want to rip away the comfort enslaving your potential. That's my call to men. It's like, I want to rip away the comfort and enslaving your potential. You're enslaved right now. You just don't know it, but you're enslaved to comfort. It's the same thing that kind of held us all back from cold calling. It's the same thing that keeps us from asking that woman on a date. It's that same thing that holds us back, because on the other end of that is not only the battling of love and the defeating of the things that hold us back, but it's also that thing that causes us to ascend and become better men in and of ourselves, like the type of men that step foot on those beaches in Normandy.
Yeah, what a powerful imagery of D-Day and Normandy, and I've read extensively about that as well, and that's a story that resonates so true. And yeah, you're right on all of that, and I think that's why your book is so powerful and will help a lot of people. There's 9 chapters, or at least 9 steps. Number 1 was choose your enemy. Are there any that jump out? We don't have to go through all 9, because I think that they're having a little bit of suspense and encouraging people to buy the book to read them all is also helpful. But what other ones jump out to you as ones that are absolutely important for someone to be adopting?
So one of the key ones is toward the end, and this is one of the steps that I found very early on, and that actually put me in some rooms with some very significant people. And I think there's probably some people that are in your audience that would like to be in those sorts of rooms as well. And the idea that you never keep something that you don't give away is a universal ideal. In fact, I was reading the Tao Te Ching this morning. I think it was chapter 36. And it said specifically that you never keep that which you never give away. The Tao Te Ching says that. You find this in both the Judeo and also the Christian scriptures, where Christ talks about nothing that you can never expect a tree to shade you or a tree to give you fruit unless you're willing to plant the seed in the ground and let it die to become a tree. Like, you'll never have anything to shade you unless you do that. No one that doesn't give up their life will ever keep their life. I mean, he says that very explicitly. And so we find these sorts of talking points that are all over. And then we go back to our original conversations about investors. It's there built in there. Because if I'm a man that has some capital and I want to hoard that capital to myself, I'm going to get eaten up by inflation. I'm going to get eaten up by the property tax. I'm going to get eaten up by that stuff. But how do I fight up against that? How do I keep the money that I have from being eaten up? I invest it with an entrepreneur. I literally give the money to an entrepreneur. Yeah, I've got a contract place. Give the money to an entrepreneur who can invest it at a rate higher than inflation. That's the only way I can keep my money, is to invest it. And so investing in itself is an act of giving it away so that you can keep your own investment. And we find the same thing at play with love. In fact, the only way to live in a loving relationship is to give your love away first. In fact, a life not given away is actually a death. That's what a life not given away is. It's just a death is all it is. And so you can give your life to someone else that really needs you and someone that you really need, you never really truly live. And Lewis, go back to the British author. I find myself quoting a lot of British authors these days. Lewis, he says that nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. Nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. And so I found this principle when I was in my mid-20s. When the business really started taking off, we had more money than we needed. And I just started giving away money. And eventually it became 50 and 60% of my income that I would give away. Now, if you think about this conceptually, if, let's say, whatever number the average broker makes, if you're giving away 50% of that, let's say a broker makes $300,000 a year, you're giving $150,000 or $200,000 away. That's a lot of money to a nonprofit. And the types of nonprofits where there's the other donors in that nonprofit that are giving $200,000 a year away, these are people that are making probably tens of millions of dollars, right? And so, because they're giving away 0.5% or 0.25% of their money. And so the types of rooms you find yourself in, if you're giving $200,000 a year away, are the types of rooms where people that are worth tens of millions of dollars hang out, not people that make $300,000 hang out. And if you can find yourself in those rooms, you're able to build relationships, build capacity, and be able to volunteer for those organizations alongside those same individuals. You'll find an explosion not only in the net worth and value of the individuals around you, but you also find people that are sort of similarly aligned, the type of person you want to become one day, because they're willing to give away, because they understand that principle that you will never keep that which you don't give away. And so you find your competency rise, and that in the end is what happens. Is you never become competent in something unless you're willing to practice. Practice is the giving away of the little bit of competence you have, with hopes to have, through successive iterations and feedback loops, have the competency returned to you in a greater volume.
Yeah, another great point. What's your ultimate goal with the book?
Man, so I want to help 10,000 men this year, by the end of this year, find some meaning in their life. It's one of those things where I believe that there's a lot of men out there that are just hopeless. Like, they look great on the outside. Maybe they have some success. Maybe they've made some money. But it's never enough, right? The most dangerous man, the poorest man, is that man that sort of makes around 150,000 a year. I think it was Nick Huber, you had your podcast a few episodes ago, that tweeted about this the other day. That man that makes about $150,000 a year, death support his family, he's got a little bit of money left over. There's this sort of golden handcuffs where he can't leave. He's too comfortable to leave and go do something on his own. But he's never has enough money where he's able to sort of compound that savings and build up something to make that one big step. So he's sort of trapped there all the time. I want to encourage men to take risks, smart risks, with what they have. But I spent 25 years developing this work, all the principles that I've learned through all those scale ups. I read 1,000 books so I could write one. I had conversations with 100 of the most competent men alive so I could write one book. And so these 9 principles are really what I believe to be the most concentrated, the most dense, rich literature that has been written in a long time. I don't say that just because it's me, just because you think about 1,000 books in one, all these conversations in one, 25 years of experience, when all these scale-ups all over the world into 9 steps. I think it's going to be, I'm hoping that it'll be a very powerful offer, but then men will actually read it with the full attention that I put into it myself, and be able to look for the action items out of it, so they can then propel them to the next level and help them unlock their mind, their happiness, their power, and even unlock their enemy's demise.
Yeah, there's a thing that I came across a number of years ago when they're talking about books, and they said most people will read a book, and speaking specifically about nonfiction, they'll read a nonfiction book with the goal of getting 2 or 3 ideas. So you commit 8 to 10 hours to read a book, you come away with 2 or 3 good things, and you feel that that's a good outcome. On yours, you've got 2 or 3 good ideas on every page. So I think that there's, like I said, I am unapologetically enthusiastically recommending your book. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I just noticed we're at the top of the hour, so I'm very respectful of your time. If you have just another minute or so, anything that I missed, any question that you wanted me to ask, or anything that you really wanted to get out that I didn't have a chance to cover yet?
I just think a lot of the guys around, again, I'm kind of thinking about maybe the brokers or real estate pros that are watching the podcast, and you got to get a heavy concentration of those guys. Business ebbs and flows. Like, a lot of guys are probably and gals are probably in the circumstance right now where they're unable to pay the bills. They're waiting for a deal to close. They've been waiting for months for this deal to close, and so they can pay the next successive round of bills, so they can go to the next iteration again. And I would just encourage folks to realize that there's some optimism out there in the world. And this book was originally called Hope Threatens. This book was originally called Hope Threatens, and I changed the title after some polling. And the reason why it's called Hope Threatens is this. I believe that if there's one of us that's optimistic, that we have a drop of hope, that it can benefit all of us. And so what I say is that if a drop of hope exists anywhere, it threatens all threats everywhere. If a drop of hope exists anywhere, it threatens all threats everywhere. And so therefore, let Chad, let my optimism, let my hope that things are going to be all right, let that sort of invade your reality, no matter what the threat is, because if one drop of hope exists anywhere, it threatens everything that you could possibly be going through. And just, if you're hopeless, just keep that in mind. Like, this is not only a focus on happiness, but it's also a focus on the future, because it's been very, very, very clear to me, the more I've read, the more I've studied these various philosophies and religions, that in order to be wise, you have to do one thing. The wisest mind looks at the most distant future for the most valued reward that it can purchase with the currency of the present. The wisest mind looks at the most distant future that it can purchase with the currency of the present. All you have is today. And if you're going to, pardon the phrase, fuck up your today by being hopeless, like, don't let it happen, because your forever is dependent on your todays. That's all that you have. You've already lost yesterday. All you have is hope for tomorrow. Let's hope for tomorrow rather than be hopeless about tomorrow. And let's focus on a drop of hope that's somewhere out there lurking. It may be in chat, and maybe somewhere else around you, but the hope is lurking right now. There's a reason to be hopeful. And man, I'd love to be able to communicate with you if we can. So reach out if I can help with anything.
That was a mic drop closing message. I will put links to everything in the show notes, including your podcast, YouTube channel, Twitter, where you can get the new book, which I've said so many times. I'll say it one more time. I highly recommend it. And I'd encourage people to reach out to you. You've got a goal of 10,000 people. Hopefully we can help a few get in contact with you, because I really do believe in your message, and hope is powerful. I completely agree. Never get into the doldrums of thinking that it's hopeless, because there's always something out there. So thank you so much for such a positive message and sharing your experience. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked business, talked a little bit of politics, talked industrial real estate development, and even left with a great closing message. So Rick, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of this.
And I appreciate your encouragement and the hope that you've given me over the last several weeks. We've had some challenges in the book release and everything, but I really do appreciate your support and all your kind words. It really means a lot. And again, get out there and buy one of my top 2 books right here, Industrialize.
Thanks for that, Rick. Well, you've got an ambassador in me. I will be doing everything I can to help you sell some books. So thank you once again. Thoroughly enjoyed this.